Hello everyone, this is New Sensei. I often get asked the question, is this a good beginner bow? This question often comes attached with a particular model or brand or manufacturer, such as the Samick Sage or the Mandarin Duck Phantom. And the question is a tricky one to answer. While it may seem like there's an obvious reason why certain bows are beginner bows, in our mind, it's actually not as clear. What makes a beginner bow different to a professional level bow? Let's talk through some of the characteristics which define these two. Here I have the Toe Point R2. Here is the Win & Win Inno CXT. What's the difference between these two risers? About $900. With that figure alone, many people will come to the conclusion that this must be a beginner bow. This makes sense in many contexts. In any sport and in many hobbies, the entry-level gear is often very cheap, much cheaper than the items used by regular or professional players. So archery isn't much different in that regard. You don't want new archers to spend thousands on their first bow and their first set of arrows if they're not sure if they're going to commit to the sport. So this sort of thing has a very big appeal. That said, there is one thing I want to debunk right away. This is a bow and so is this. Functionally, they are identical. There is no reason why a beginner can't use the top-end bows right away. And that's one thing I want to clarify straight away. Some people think that advanced bows, such as this one, have more functionality and more features which requires more advanced training. And sometimes they'll excuse themselves from getting a very good bow because, well, they're new, they don't know what to do, they're not sure what a good bow will feel like, so they're not going to spend $1,000 or $2,000 on a bow. That also makes sense. The thing to consider, however, is that you can grow into a bow like this just as easily as a bow like this. So if you're thinking long term, then there's nothing stopping you from learning on this bow. So what do you lose when you go from a $1,000 bow to a $100 bow? Bows like the Toe Point R2 share similar characteristics but miss a few others. It has the same basic functionality. It has the mountings for a sight, it has a plunger hole, it has a front stabilizer bushing, and that's basically it. You might be missing things like top and bottom stabilizer bushings, and more importantly, often the limb pocket system is not the standard ILF or International Limb Fitting. Most of the current modern risers use ILF or a similar system where you slide and click and it locks in. And they're interchangeable, so you can use most limbs with most risers. The cheaper entry-level risers like this one, the very cheap ones, often don't have that. They can only use their own limbs. So if you want to replace the limbs, you have to order them from the same company or the same brand. Also, they're a bit hard to put in and out. You have to use screws or bolts to lock them in rather than click and you're done. But that's something you can sacrifice for the sake of cost and economy. Is there anything else about these bows which make them really cheap and undesirable? The thing for me is that if I've never done archery before, would I have a good experience with a bow like this? And the answer is yes. While there are certain limitations, for an absolute beginner, you don't need these options. Later on, when you advance and you become an intermediate shooter or professional shooter, then you want something with more customization. But by itself, a bow like this is just fine. So if you're asking about bows like the Toe Point and are they good beginner bows, then sure, they're suitable for people who want to try archery at a low price. However, that doesn't mean that every cheap bow is a good beginner bow. One of the things that I judge with good bows is how likely are you to grow into it? Will it allow you to learn good habits? Some bow designs are less intuitive than others. For example, a lot of people ask about the Mandarin Duck Phantom. I've already reviewed it, I don't have it here right now, but I've generally said good things about it. For its low price point of $80 US, it is a decent bow. I enjoyed using it. It's a good bow which gives you a good experience. That said, it isn't the most user-friendly bow. The shape of the bow, the shape of the grip and its performance doesn't really help a beginner learn. You kind of already need to have some archery background to use it well, whereas true beginner bows, bows which are low price but can be picked up and used and learned by anyone, are somewhat different. My idea of a beginner bow is something like this. This is the PC Razorback, which I've reviewed already. Most clubs have a bow like this. Not necessarily this model, but a similar wooden recurve. There's a reason why this is very popular. It's simple, plain, nearly standard. The shape and design are going to be similar for nearly every wooden recurve. You can go to any club, pick up their wooden recurve and shoot just the same. There's no different feeling. So this is why if you're looking for a beginner bow, this is a good benchmark to aim for. And nearly every bow you find that is a similar wooden recurve design is definitely going to be a safe buy. You don't have to ask me. If you link me something like the Mandarin Duck Windrunner or the Samick Polaris or the Samick Sage, I'm going to say it looks okay. There isn't really much that can go wrong with a wooden recurve. So that's going to be a fairly good, affordable buy. You will enjoy archery with a bow like this. So that to me is the epitome, the representation, the archetype of a beginner bow. Bows like this one, the Towpoint R2, are often sold in beginner packages. In my opinion, these risers are the next level up. They're still beginner level, so it's still basic functionality, but at a very cheap price. And some clubs do train the beginners on metal bows like this one, so that's completely fine as well. However, like I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with a beginner starting with a bow like this. Yes, it may seem like a very big financial investment, but that's what you get for quality. The reason why people are afraid is because of price. Again, that's fair. If you're not sure if you want to do archery, then buying an expensive riser or bow is going to be a little risky. That said, a beginner can grow into a bow like this in a fairly short period of time. Now, you may find that beginners will be overwhelmed by the look or the weight or all the fancy gadgets, but these things don't take that long to learn. So I guess I would say the most important distinction factor between professional and beginner bows is cost. The beginner bows are much lower in price at the cost of more customization or functionality options. Whereas bows like this one have all the functionality and the feel of a heavy-duty, high-performance bow, but at a much higher price tag. To summarize, beginner bows are usually categorized by their very low prices. They maintain basic functionality, everything you need to get started in archery. However, they often don't provide pathways for progress. If you want to advance to the next level or start competing, then you probably have to buy an entire new bow. And that's probably the decision that new archers have to make. Should I buy a cheap archery kit and have everything I need in one shot? Or should I buy something I can grow into and advance as I get better and more committed to archery? In addition, the lowered cost of beginner bows often comes at the cost of quality finish and comfort. The high-end bows are often made from better materials and have better quality control and generally look and feel nicer. If you can accept that you won't have the best feeling bow or the best looking bow, then a beginner bow is fine. And most people starting out just want a bow to shoot. However, some bows which are cheap and are good for things like just having a bow aren't necessarily good for learning with, and this is because of the design and shape, which makes it a bit hard to use for the average beginner. Anyway, this is Nu Sensei. Hope you found this helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.